celebrating and showcasing extraordinary people who are doing incredible things to make our world a better place. This is Close-Up Television. I'm your host, Jim Masters, and thanks for joining us. On today's episode, we celebrate Susan A. Marshall. Susan is a well-regarded speaker, leadership advisor, and founder of Backbone Institute, where she works with high-performance leaders in the public and private sector, nonprofit agencies, and public education. Susan is also the acclaimed author of 4 books: Mom's Gone Missing, When a Parent's Changing Life Upends Yours, How to Grow a Backbone, 10 Strategies for Gaining Power and Influence at Work, Of Beauty and Substance, A Backbone Guide for Women, and Life, Be in It. Her work is centered on encouraging leaders to strengthen their capabilities and to unlock their distinct abilities and skills and lead with confidence. Known for her approachable, practical, empathetic style, Susan brings to her work a powerful combination of expertise and inner wisdom. Coupled with her passion for helping leaders resiliently navigate and flourish in times of change, her clients feel empowered to make significant transitions and more purposeful, informed decisions personally and professionally. Now, to learn more about Susan's extraordinary work, she joins me in the Close-Up Television studio today for this exclusive interview. Susan, welcome to Close-Up Television. It's a pleasure to have you here. We chatted on the radio. We had such an extraordinary conversation. I wanted you to come here to the studio so we can delve in a little bit deeper. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely delighted to be here. And I was driving from the airport to the hotel yesterday, late afternoon, evening. It's just like northern Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Wooded, beautiful, not a lot of development between once you leave the airport spur. So I felt very much at home.
I've been to Wisconsin. It's beautiful. Yeah. Really, really nice. Beautiful area, too. And were you born and raised there?
I was in Wisconsin, yes. Born in Milwaukee, raised in a small little town called West Bend. Moved a couple of times, and I'm even in a smaller little town now called Oconomowoc. And my favorite thing about Oconomowoc is ordering, right? You call or you get a customer service person, and they ask for your zip code, which I give them, and then they say, I'm like, come on.
They're trying to say the name of the town.
Come on, yeah. Oconomowoc.
Okonoki,
Slow down, yeah. So anyway, it's fun, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful area. It's called Lake Country.
Very nice.
I don't live near or on a lake, but it's beautiful area.
Does your work take you to a lot of different places? Do you travel a lot with this work?
It did, Jim. And of course, COVID shut everything down, as you and I both know. And so I have not really traveled a lot. In fact, I have not been on a plane before I got on a plane yesterday for 2+ years.
Yeah.
And I remember before I left home, I'm like, oh, do I still know how to do this? So yeah, it was easy and comfortable.
What initially inspired you to do this work, Susan? I know it's work that really speaks to your heart and soul, but there's always inspirations, as we talk about in our own life's journey, that point us in this direction of doing the work we end up doing, that we realize when we're lucky, it's work we love to do, but also work we have to do. When did you realize that on your own journey? I
think when I was a kid. When I was young, I wanted to be an actress because I loved the music and the sound. And of course, I can't sing, so, that dream died hard. But I remember I'm the second of 6 kids. And so I grew up actually being an observer of people. And I was fascinated constantly by how some people really connect. And other people are either so busy or indifferent that they simply don't. And as a teenager, I would go and spend time with my grandmother. She was not an educated woman. I don't know that she ever finished grade school. And she used to she'd drink her beer, and she would play solitaire with real cards, right back then.
The real deal, yeah.
And I loved her. And I would go, and especially with, high school boy problems, and, Grandma, what should I do? And she'd say, I don't know. But Grandma, you need to tell me, what should I do? And she'd say, what do you want to do? I don't know. And then she said something, Jim, that I've never forgotten, and really informs a lot of my work with people, particularly when they're agitated. She said, you're not done thinking yet. You're not done thinking yet. So if you are wired to be a thinker, that's a wonderful thing. We realize many people are not. We're all wired so differently. But the people who are not wired to think and just get it done, it has been helpful to help them settle.
Yeah.
And rather than rush and do things that have consequences, intended or otherwise, sometimes we can head off, some of the biggest whoopsies So
How do you describe yourself? Are you a thinker? Like for me, I would say I'm a thinker. I'm always thinking. Even when it doesn't look like I am, and everything's calm, cool, collected, I'm always thinking.
Yeah.
But it's an amazing thing because a lot of times when you think of the thinker, you're thinking of somebody who is very linear and just, all right, let's get it done, in, out, next. But I'm not really like that. I'm much more of an empathetic, compassionate thinker. So there's these two things that are equal at the same time. How about you?
the same, but if you think about what you just said, that's a lot of intellectual energy going to understanding from an empathic standpoint what's going on with that person, bringing your own knowledge or at least sense of understanding that compassion. There's a lot of intellectual energy that goes into that, and a lot of care. Yes, you're wired that way, as am I, but it takes time to really appreciate that. I loved your story before we started this about driving through Death Valley, and how you have these experiences that really help you realize things.
Right.
And in my experience, it's been a multi-step process of realizing something and then going, oh, do I like that? Nah, can I apply that to me? Maybe, maybe not. And the older you get and the more work you do and the more people you interact with, you realize it is me.
Yes, right.
And so how can I express that in ways I'm a helper, that are helpful to others, but also in ways that make me proud of me.
Right.
All my flaws, all of the stuff, right, the stories and the mistakes. But I think that's what really fuels my work as well, is recognizing that every individual I work with, whether it's an executive, whether it's a high school student, has aspiration, already has a story.
Yes.
And we are somewhere in the process of accepting and then living that story. So, my work is part therapy and part, kicking the butt.
It's a combination, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. You got to keep it moving and keep the rivers flowing, but at the same time, pause and reflect and have some compassion along the way. When you decided to go into this work, what was it you were looking to do and hoping to do with it in your connection with others?
I didn't know. Frankly, I didn't know. I grew up a marketer. I actually wanted to be in HR. And my father, who was the vice president of human resources for a manufacturing company, refused to hire any of his children, there were 6 of us, because he did not want to be embarrassed. So, but I went to him and I said, Dad, I want to be in HR. And he said, no, you don't. There's no money in that. Go into sales. Well, I had a terrible experience as a 16-year-old kid. A photographer sold me a package of photography right from high school graduation, and when you get married and when you have kids and all this stuff, committed suicide before he could ever take one photo. And because I had signed a contract, I owed the money.
Even though he was gone, really, yeah.
And I thought, I am never going to do that to another human. So sales, keep it away from me. And that's unfortunate. I think I probably would have made a lot of money. But that's the other aspect about my personality. That money doesn't drive me. It's making a contribution that means something to somebody. That's what drives me.
So let's talk about the actual day-to-day work. When you created Backbone Institute, what was it you were hoping to bring to bear that maybe you didn't see existing elsewhere?
Yeah, it really stems back to the book, How to Grow a Backbone. And as I was writing that, I ran into an agent who loved the title. He said, How to Grow a Backbone, that's awesome. What's it about? I don't know. So I had to think. About if this were a thing, you'd always hear people say, oh, grow a backbone. What is that?
Right.
And so I really worked on that. I reflected a lot. It took me a lot of time walking and thinking. I walk a lot and think. And the 3 elements that seemed to make some sense to me were competence, confidence, and risk-taking. I'm like, well, those are very different things, right? Competence and risk-taking seem to compete. But the more I thought about it, the more I wrote about it, it's really a simple learning system. So if I can say, here's the risk I want to take, call it a goal, then I can back up and say, well, what do I need to get good at, the competence piece, to elevate my confidence to go do that. And it's not I'm going to leap a chasm, which is, in our impatient society, it's like, maybe make me good by next Tuesday.
Exactly.
It takes time and it takes iterative learning and lots of trial and error. And a lot of times we make errors and say, oh my God, I can't tell anybody about that. I messed up.
Right.
Yeah, you did.
Right.
What did you learn?
Yeah.
What did you learn?
Right.
And so that learning process really became a system that I realized worked in any environment with any individual struggling with any question. And it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot of things. I've learned a lot of industries that I never would have. I think about, how do you get to do what you do? And it was really stumble forward. Or Peter Block's book, The Answer to How is Yes. That really is the answer for me. I said yes a lot.
I like that. The yes is part of the how, exactly. I always tend to, I don't know if you did, I always ask the why too, because I like to feel it. So I like to feel, and by asking the why, then I can feel it. Are you a why person as well?
I am. And in fact, it's so interesting you say that, because in the leadership world, the why from workers is often perceived as a challenge or a resistance, when the fact is, just help me know why. Then I can decide how best to do what it is you've asked. But we're often, somebody says, why? Why do you think that? We feel like they're challenging, or we somehow said something wrong. It's the wrong interpretation of that.
It's showing interest too, and wanting to understand and feel it, and maybe be able, like you say, take it and run with it, and maybe make it better. So when you created the Backbone Institute, I think it's a great name. And it's funny because, like you say, people would say, grow a backbone, and sometimes people would take that as a negative.
Absolutely.
Like, what are you saying? I'm weak, I'm vulnerable, I'm not strong. Let me show you how strong I am. And but this really is about the confidence part, right?
Absolutely.
Confidence, not everybody always has it, or they don't express it. Some people maybe do it on the flip side, where they're overconfident and they let you know. Tell us about the balance, finding that perfect balance when it comes to confidence and the expression of it.
Yeah, I think that too is very messy. In fact, in pursuit of that, I was asked early on to work with female executives. And often I would hear, you help them develop presence. Well, in your environment, what does presence mean? And nobody could articulate that. So I'm like, okay, I don't know what you think I'm going to do for this person. I remember a large Fortune 500 company. I walked in, VP of whatever her department was. And I looked at her and we chatted for 3 minutes, and I'm like, I'm looking at Sister Mary Ellen. Very meek, very mild, very soft-spoken, zero confidence.
Right.
And yet she's in this hard-driving, research-based, go-get-'em kind of environment. And I thought, you know what? There's no amount of confidence that's going to equip this woman to participate in truly what was a toxic environment. So I went back to my sponsor and I said, I think this is mission impossible. And of course they were very disappointed and dismissed me from the particular role and brought in somebody else who didn't succeed, but was hard driving.
Yeah, hard driving, yes.
There's a time for that. And there's a time when people just need kind of the push to go do things. More times than not, that's really not at the get-go. Now, I also walked into a guy's office one day and he said, how I'm going to know you're any good? And I'm like, nope, don't know. He said, if you can fix me. And I sailing pictures on his wall and all this kind of paraphernalia. And I just chuckled and I said, no, sir, that's backwards.
Right.
I said, I'm here to help you do your work.
Right.
Nope, it's not what he wanted. So see it. So how many times do you get excused?
Yeah.
Right before you actually do work?
Well, it's the kind of thing like when I've talked to coaches and others too, where you realize that you have to participate. It isn't where they're just going to come in and do everything for you. They're not going to make the bed. They're not going to do the dish. You know what I mean? As analogies, you have to participate in your own life, because Susan isn't going to always be in the room 24/7. So there's going to be times when you need to call upon some of those methods and techniques that you have taught the client, that they can, oh yeah, Susan said, oh yeah, Susan recommended handling it this way. Or I remember when we talked about this, she gave me this advice to treat the situation this way. And sometimes they want you to be the one that's doing the heavy lifting, but they really need to. You're sort of like the conduit, the facilitator.
Yes.
And it's flowing through you, hopefully connecting with them, right? Tell us how that works.
Yeah, it's a really good description that you just gave for the work, because the competence piece is learning different ways to address the situation. We talked earlier about tone of voice, using your voice differently. If you are someone who comes in and says, here's what we're going to do, and that's not well received, maybe go in and ask a question. Maybe go in and say, I've been thinking about this, and this, what do you guys think? Wow, I could never do that.
Right.
I remember one woman in particular I was working with, she said, I could never do that. Not in this environment. I said, why not? She said, I would look indecisive. Mm-hmm. So in the environment, again, context is everything. You and I talked about this in our radio interview we do. Context is everything. If this is a situation where you come in with an answer and people salute and then go and don't do, what have you accomplished?
What's the point of that? Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but the whole notion of context and environment is something that apparently we don't talk enough about, because people believe that once I get this skill, right, the 5 ways to do this, the 3 keys to, once I get those, I can go anywhere and do those things. Well, not if you're not reading the environment. And so that's a competence piece.
Right.
That really, it's kind of mysteriously, people begin to read a room and see who's here and listen to the conversation. They begin to adapt, which takes confidence up.
Right.
Which then prepares them to take greater risk. So that's really what this is all about.
They're all so interwoven and linked.
Yes,
exactly.
absolutely.
The competence leads to the confidence, which allows for dipping the feet in a little bit further. Let's talk about the risk taking. Some people are built automatically to bungee jump off bridges, and some would rather be home having, a dish of vanilla ice cream. So it takes all types, and everybody, is valuable and have their own way of doing things in life. But when it comes to the risk taking, how do you work with people on that? If they are, overachievers and they want to take total risk constantly, matter of fact, they live off the high of the risk, and then those who are like, I need to think about this first.
It goes back to context. What is it that you want to accomplish in this exchange, in this meeting, in this environment? And most people simply don't think about that. I'm built this way and I'm going to go. But when I go and I run and I charge, I notice people dropping off or people disconnecting. In How to Grow a Backbone, I wrote a chapter on eyes, how people use their eyes to connect, to signal attachment, to leave a conversation. Once people begin to watch those kinds of things, again, they develop the skill, the competence to appreciate that you're dealing with others, right? You are not a Lone Ranger, even though in your own mind you think you are, and the best ever.
Right.
And so but again, that takes time. People want to give this 2 weeks or 2 months and say, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Well, it's a learning and growing process. And so it does take time, and that frustrates a lot of people. And a lot of people get very mad at me. It's okay.
They want everything done now, and they want instant results immediately.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's sad because they're so shortchanging themselves, right? You can get an outcome today that 2 weeks from now or 6 months from now, you may look back and go, geez, why did I do that?
Right. Yeah, I rushed that, I forced that. Should have taken some time, should have allowed it to breathe.
Right. Conversely, the people, I don't know, are sometimes just put together that way. So we do baby steps incrementally. What could you say differently? How could you maybe ask a different question? How could you use your voice differently? There was a woman I was coaching who was very, very timid. She was very smart, wicked smart, but very timid, and she spoke like this. I said, Diane, talk louder. And so she did. She tried a couple things. I'm like, right there, and she goes, I feel like I'm shouting. I'm like, it's okay, shout, because you sound confident. You know what you're talking about. So every person's different.
Now, are there others, in addition to those 3, that comprise of developing and maintaining this backbone?
There's, it's a spectrum, obviously, but in terms of thinking clearly about what we're trying to do here, backbone is different for every human, and backbone in every situation can be slightly different. So what tools can I build out, the competence pieces, to make sure, and it starts, in my estimation, Jim, with reading the environment. Where am I? Who's here? Why are we here together?
Tell us about your clients. Do you find a thread with your clients? Are they all frustrated or searching for the same thing, or is it not a cookie cutter approach, not one size fits all. The clients come from a various array of backgrounds and passions and interests that you work with. Tell us about the clients you're working with.
Yes, they are all frustrated. Yes, they are increasingly angry. And yes, they are lost. And it feels today, and I think the pandemic had an awful lot to do with this, people feel personally hollowed out, searching for meaning, looking at this job that they're doing, the money they're making, the things that we've all been told equate to success. Some are very happy with those things, and yet there's more.
That great resignation we've been seeing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And people, just chucking life work, saying, this is not me, this is not what I want to do, and that fascinates me. I think we're all told and taught and encouraged to be something. And for whatever
fit into
reason.
the mold.
Yeah.
Be a cog in the wheel sometimes, and you have to do this, and you got to do that, and you got to do that, and then you're successful. And so there's this one size fits all definition of success.
Yeah.
When people, I guess, are realizing that, there's other things you could do that really speak to who you are and allow you to connect with people.
And again, as we talked earlier, it's a learning process. I think there is a time to conform and to learn a system and to learn how to be part of a team and to learn how to follow rules. That's called maturing in my mind. It's growing up, right? But once
society,
you have
to.
that, and you have a better sense of what it is you want to do. Now, the two probably primary breakdown areas that I see from my clients, one is, what contribution can I make, right? Legacy definition sometimes. And the other is, what can I get? Yeah. How much stuff, right? The person with the most toys wins kind of idea. And those take very different orientations in terms of working with them. And I like to work with individuals in the sense of putting their feet on the ground and finding some confidence. My preference is to work in an environment and help people understand that they truly can be adaptive without faking, right? Fake it till you make it. I hate that expression.
Yeah.
But we're taught that too. Fake it till you make it, you'll figure it out.
That comes back to bite. That comes back.
And that's, again, back to the thinking part we talked about early in this conversation. If you're not thinking about that, if you're not even aware of it, you create situations sometimes where you go, wish somebody had helped me.
Yeah. So are you dealing with individuals, groups, teams? Let's talk about sort of the scenario.
All of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above. And from high school kids, I teach in a summer leadership institute or academy back in Wisconsin, where we're working with juniors and seniors in high school, and that's a ton of fun. All the way to people who they're going to retire, and 2 years later they're going to retire, and 3 years later they're going to retire. Meanwhile, the organization is get him out of here, get her out of here.
Yeah.
Right. So, but the questions are different. And perhaps competence, confidence, risk-taking is too simplistic. I don't think so, because it helps people adjust to where they are and define their own risk or next step and say, okay, what do we need to build in order to elevate the confidence to go do that?
What are some of the things you think that people are frustrated with today? I mean, obviously, like you say, the pandemic has changed the game in all aspects of our lives that we could never have scripted or planned for. Some of it's been like a Twilight Zone episode or something at so many different levels. Yeah. But what are some of the things people are confused about, dealing with, concerned about today in this environment?
I will put it into the business context and kind of put the leadership umbrella over all of it. People are very frustrated and even angry at people who will not listen.
And there's a lot of that.
A lot of that.
Nobody's listening to anybody. Yeah.
Nobody's hearing. I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want to be respected. Sometimes people get very upset with me when I ask, I want to be respected. I ask, how are you being respectable? How are you demonstrating that you are one to be? Don't like that line of discussion whatsoever. So again, back to the responsibility piece. If there's something that I want, What am I willing to do to get that? And if the answer is, then I lose the opportunity to demand that I have something. So people are frustrated, they're not heard, they're not seen, they're not respected, their ideas are not valued. And I'm seeing right now this tremendous, almost cataclysmic change between the Great Resignation, yes, people leaving after many, many years of working in an industry perhaps, and young people who are extraordinarily tech savvy, I'm not, and very quick thinkers but have zero experience. And so we don't use the same language and we don't use the same communication tools.
Or skills, yeah.
And so there's this, get out of here, old person, it's my turn now. And the old person saying, knock yourself out, kid, you don't understand. And so how do we, that's a lot of the work that I'm doing right now.
There's a divide that's big between, the seasoned veteran and the person coming up the ranks.
And how do we build that bridge? And how do we extend respect up front, even though it may not yet be earned? But let's give each other the benefit of the doubt, open our minds, open our ears, and listen to one another.
How is that coming into play, the technological advances in social media and all the rest, to where some people are choosing to communicate via technology, the social media posts, the text, the tweet, almost sometimes hidden behind a veil, versus the one-on-one way that a lot of people have been used to as well, and some people prefer that sort of, hey, let's get together for coffee and talk about it over a sandwich or something, and others who don't want to do that at all. They want to have any contact. It's just, I'll send a tweet and I'm done. That's a whole other, there's two different worlds that are competing. Some are great communicators and others, you can't get two words out of them. That's a lot for you. You got your hands full working with everybody.
And pockets and boots and everything. You and I sitting here today having this conversation, we're dinosaurs. Absolutely
in
dinosaurs.
Doing this type of, and I tell you, I love every second of this type of thing.
I do too.
I think the world needs this.
Yeah, I do too. And so how do we pry the younger people's fingers off of their technologies? Again, the pandemic exacerbated all
It made
of
it even
this.
more. Everybody's
Absolutely.
Online, everybody's...
And so there's a shyness, there's a real lack of self-awareness, and there's pressure to go fast. Yeah. There's pressure to be witty and to be smart and to be funny and to be right and to be all this stuff. And even though we try to adapt to those things and do those things, the uncertainty of, is this the right thing, continues to be driven deeper and deeper. And that's frankly my fear. I think we all have our snapping point, and there needs to be a reconciliation of this speed and pressure and technology with wisdom and understanding, compassion. How we get there, I think we're learning. I think stepping out of the pandemic is helping us be aware of some things that perhaps we weren't before. So that's, silver lining.
Yeah. We were talking about the fact, I mentioned in the introduction, that you've authored 4 books. I mean, congratulations. That's a daunting task to be able to accomplish that. And each are unique. Yeah. Each have its own place and purpose. The first one I want to reference, How to Grow a Backbone, because it ties in beautifully to what we're talking about. 10 Strategies for Gaining Power and Influence at Work. This was published 22 years ago. Tell us about this.
Yeah, it was my first book. When I was probably 15 or 16, I said to my grandfather, whom I adored, Grandpa, I'm going to write a book. Someday I'm going to write a book. And even then, I'm thinking, I'm going to be like Danielle Steele. I'm going to live on the beach. I'm going to write, novels.
Yes.
Well, never in my wildest dreams expected I'd write a business book. But I am a helper. I am an observer. And for years, early on in my career, I would watch people and wonder, why can someone present an idea and people get enthusiastic about it, and others can be absolutely brilliant and have nobody respect what they're saying? And so that was one aspect of the book. And the other was, I'm a voracious reader. I love books on leadership. I eat all that up. And I can remember many, many times putting a book down going, okay, what do I do now? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to marry the observations that I had had and things that people do that make them effective with this notion of when somebody's done reading this, I want them to want to go do something. And so at the end of each chapter, I had actually steps to do to build your competence, to elevate your confidence, and to move closer to that risk-taking. So that was pretty cool. It's very pragmatic. I'm a pragmatist. But I wanted to help people understand we each have the capacity to be stronger.
Is it really targeted specifically, would you say, for the business readers? I would imagine it helps people with their personal challenges as well.
It does. And yes, it was targeted to a business audience initially. In fact, the cover shows a guy. Had so many people. Why did you choose a guy? It was 22 years ago. Come on, right?
Hey.
But, kind of the stooped over and then standing tall. And that was the idea, and I loved it. The illustrator I worked with at the time was brilliant. Just a wonderful touch to humor and, capturing the human
Wit
spirit.
And,
Yeah, so that was designed to be not a how-to book necessarily, but more on that order in a business context.
Mm. What's been the response? I mean, 22 years, that's amazing.
People are still
Has
reading.
it had reprints and multiple reprints?
In fact, I was talking with a young 28, 29-year-old woman who is right now in the midst of some tough stuff at work.
Yeah.
She said, I'm reading your book and I love it. I wish I had found it years ago.
Isn't that great?
I think it's the human stuff that you and I have talked about.
Yes, right.
People are people. Our environments change.
And they're
everything.
craving these things that they're craving. And I think people are, it almost seems like there's two different worlds happening. There's those who are craving the connection, craving that conversation, craving the ability to express, be heard, come to the table equally. And then there's another side that it's just go, go, go. We don't have time for that. There's no time to listen, be interested. I don't care what your feelings are. Next, 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 bigger, better, next. Yeah. And there's these two worlds competing. Yeah. So do you find it sometimes a role of yours to try to connect those two, to find the link, to bridge those two? Really,
no, because they're so diametrically different.
They really are.
However, given that, what I do encourage people to do is to watch the behaviors again. I don't know what people are thinking.
Right.
Don't know motivations, but we can watch behavior. And if this behavior tends to be effective, whether it's the compassion or the hard driving, try it.
Right.
Try it. And if you find, even though it's different than how you're put together, if that is a method or a tool or technique, whatever you want to call it, that works in certain environments, why not try it? Why not use it?
Take the risk.
And that's hard. That is a risk. And that's hard for people to accept and even harder to do because they're like, yeah, it's just not me.
Yeah.
Are you saying that you are this little thing or can you expand? And again, this competence piece, right? Get good at a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then once you do that and develop this confidence, you can go anywhere you want. You can talk to anyone you want about anything that comes up and be okay with it.
People will listen. They'll be drawn to the confidence.
Yeah.
The confidence can be attractive to people.
Very much
right?
so.
And the competence. Now, you've written 3 other books as well. What drives you to write?
Expression, right? We all have the need to express.
Yeah.
I love words. I love humor. And so when I can help people, and I'm constantly trying to help people to relax, right? To find the humor in life.
Yeah.
To find some joy in what you do or with people that you communicate with. And for some people, you know what, just not interested. Okay.
You know, sometimes we also think about, will people be interested in what we're saying, even if you're looking to help others? What do you think it is about your perspective that draws people in to where they're interested in your thoughts, your ideas?
I think because I have made about every mistake you can make.
Been there, done that, walk the walk, talk the talk, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny because people will say, wow, you really screwed up a lot of stuff. I'm like, yeah, actually I have. But the fact that I can be okay with that and talk about it, people are intrigued by that.
Because most people would sweep that under the rug. No, I don't make mistakes. I'm perfect. I've never done that. That's not me. She did it. He did it. I don't, that makes me look weak and vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Most people think that way.
Yeah.
But
And when you can simply live.
It's authentic. It's being authentic.
Yeah.
And people are drawn to that as well. Well, if somebody, at this expert level has, tried different things and didn't always work out, there must be something great that she's learned about it that I can learn from her.
I think that's it. And I think it's, if I can be okay, like she appears to be right, and sometimes this is theater, you and I both know this.
Sure.
But if there's that level of okayness, I want that too.
Yeah.
I want that too. And now that's not therapy. And I often have to tell people there's a fine line here. I am not a therapist.
Did some look for that from you? They
Absolutely.
Want that, yeah.
And I am not. If you feel like you want a referral, I'm happy to do that.
You can direct
Let's
them.
talk about actually what you're doing. Like I said, I can't know what you're thinking. I don't know your motivations. But I can certainly observe what's happening in an environment and how others are responding to. If they're responding in the way you want, fantastic. If they're not, what do we try differently?
Now, you're not a full-time writer, huh? You would think with all these books and all this interest, but because you have the Institute and all the other practical work you're doing day to day, is this something you've thought about doing?
Yeah, in fact, when I was a kid, I was going to be a writer.
You were going to do that?
And I couldn't figure out how to make money, right? And so when I wrote the first book, Agent, No Agent, self-publishing really wasn't a thing then. But
no, it's bigger now, right?
Yeah,
right.
It took a long time. And so I just never really figured out how to make a living. I wasn't doing it constantly. I read the great writers who have written, all these books, and primarily fiction. They write every day for hours.
Yeah.
I've never been that
Developing
disciplined.
plot lines, storylines, formatting.
That intrigues me intellectually. I'm just not able to do it. And so I write about things that I've observed that really feel important. Again,
it has substance to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I think is important sometimes is just nobody else does. Okay, I've learned to accept that.
Did
For
that
a
take
while.
time?
Oh gosh, yeah. Because if I spent my hard time,
how could they not respond to this?
How could
Who are they to not listen to? I spent hours on this.
Come on, man.
I care about doing it. I really want to help you, but you're not listening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you work through, this is good advice for anybody watching right now.
Yeah.
How did you work through that where not everybody's going to respond, or just, you got to just stay true to the work and keep going forward with it as you continue to reach more people?
Do you like steak? I'd rather have shrimp.
Yeah.
We
I
go to
love
a
mashed
restaurant.
potatoes.
Yeah, see? So we're okay with those differences.
All those things, yeah.
But when it comes to how we think and how we see the world, how come we're not all the same? Well, we're not all the same. So, but to answer your question about getting past this heartbreak, really, for me I was devastated initially. People don't like this, what? I'm deficient, right? What I learned instead was, no, look, I'm putting my voice out there. I want it to be kind. I want it to be compassionate. I want it to be intelligent. I want it to have some sense that I'm paying attention. It's a voice. And so if people will hear it and learn from it, fantastic.
Yeah.
If they're not, that's okay.
And that's okay,
It's
too.
a great privilege, as you know, to get your voice out.
Sure, right. Because you're connecting with people and you're, hopefully it resonates with people. What is that moment like for you when you see it in their eyes, they hear it in their voice, where they're really connecting, they're really getting and appreciating, and they can't get enough of what Susan Marshall's offering?
That's a really good question, Jim, and it's not one that I've heard before. It is intimidating on one hand, because you're really having an impact on another human being. And that's when I go, but I'm just me.
You're doing you, yeah.
And that's the whole point. I'm just me. You're just you. These people that we have the privilege of, they're just them. And we are all so incredible. So incredible. So you be you, I'll be me, you do you. And there's a dismissive quality. But when you really begin to appreciate what each of us brings to this, phenomenal. When someone connects with my work, I feel so grateful.
Yeah.
I certainly feel validated. How could you not? But the fact that, and Mom's Gone Missing has been the most powerful. I know we'll talk about that in a minute. People they're like, wow, you're just telling my story.
Yeah, yeah. resonates, you hit a
Yeah.
chord with them.
That's a
Yeah.
privilege beyond description.
You know, you have all this wonderful work that you've sort of accumulated and created for yourself. How do you describe your brand? What does your brand represent?
Yeah, it's some of the words that I mentioned: compassion, certainly, humor, intelligence, get-itness. You know, she gets it. And what's ironic about, you know, I've created all this work for me. None of it's been for me.
Mm-hmm.
It has accrued benefits to me, certainly, but it's always been for others.
For others, yeah.
And I've been criticized pretty soundly over the course of my life. You need to be more, you know, you need to make this more about you. It's not. It's never been. Now, does that mean I have no boundaries? No, not at all. It's just that the motivation isn't to shine my star, to make myself this. It's really to reach and touch people who are needing to be understood, to be heard, to be
Right.
seen.
What about resistance? I'm sure you have situations where you've gone into places or you're dealing with folks who feel that they have this confidence and that they have all the answers, and here you're coming in with your wisdom and your wit and your technical expertise, and they're like, oh, well, I'm good. I know what I'm doing. I know how to do it. I don't need any instruction or any tweaking. How do you work with those folks who you can see automatically almost this armor, this wall rising?
Okay.
You find it a challenge
Is there any, well,
to try to break through
sure,
that armor?
yes, I do. Initially, I was devastated by it. I'm like, I am no good at this. What made me ever think I should be even thinking about this?
So you were questioning your own confidence.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, big time. But now, when I encounter that, it's, okay, is there anything that you would like to do better? Is there someone you would like to convince of something that you've not? Whoa, now you've got my interest, right?
Yeah.
So it's not power struggle. It's, look, if I can help you do something, cool. If
Right.
not, that's okay.
Because usually oftentimes when they put up that wall or that armor, there's something they're hiding underneath.
Yeah,
They
very
don't
much
want seen.
Yeah.
And sometimes you create this level of comfort and trust between you and them and you, that armor starts to come down.
Yeah.
And then they start to reveal their true feelings, their fears, their frustrations, which is a beautiful thing. Some people try to force the armor to come down. Come on, take that out. And then others allow it to. And it seems that you allow that space and that air to breathe, to be able to breathe the air, so that armor does come down for them.
I don't know any other way to help someone who is tense, who is frightened, who is angry.
I love that expression. I don't know any other way.
I don't,
Yeah.
because it isn't what I want for you. And oftentimes I'm brought into a situation where if I'm coaching someone, a boss has said, you need help.
Yeah, right.
The relationship between the person I'm coaching and the boss often is not great.
It's not good, yeah.
Right? I can't fix that. I can respect it, but what's also kind of humorous, when people start opening up and telling you stuff, and that's when I go poker face. Poker face, do not respond, do not, unless it's validation, right? And I'm so glad. Oftentimes people can't read your thought bubbles. It's like, oh dear, poker face.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah. Respect, respect, respect.
That's so important. It comes back to that. The pandemic, you alluded to the pandemic and how it has changed things in such an extraordinary way. How has the pandemic affected your work, and even in the way that you look at leadership? I think it's been a real test of leadership on many different levels. There are those who didn't lead at all, yet they're in leadership roles. And there are those who were the understated leaders who rolled up their sleeves and said, let's do what we can. And others who were thrust into leadership and took the bull by the horns and made things happen to sort of bring things together. Tell us about that.
That is quite the quagmire that you've just described, and it's all true. And what has happened in many cases is a confusion about what is leadership, right? It's not a role. Oftentimes it's considered to be that. It's not about a power structure, though. That's how we're rewarded, paid, promoted. But it's interesting to watch almost a decision-making process that's silent, but when somebody pushes up the sleeves and says, I'm going to go do that, you can almost see the transformation of persona. The leaders who are supposed to be leaders, who don't know what to do, who are not sure of the environment has changed. If I can't read the environment, I don't know what I'm doing. Those are the ones who tend to go hide. Mm-hmm. And then every once in a while we'll issue edicts.
Yeah.
That breaks trust, that confuses the organization, and that people, and I think, I don't have data for this, but the Great Resignation may be largely because that some of that has happened.
Yeah.
This person I'm supposed to be reporting to as my leader, gone.
They're not even there. Yeah.
But telling me I should do ABC.
Right. Yeah.
I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore.
No, that doesn't. So what advice would you give to emerging leaders today, and has that advice that you would offer changed over what you would have recommended just a few years back?
It has. It has. And the reason is what we were talking about earlier. Young people need to grow into life and understanding an environment, understanding the challenges and the competition, all of that. There's not a lot of time to do that.
Right.
But where I would have said be patient, pay your dues. Talk to any young person today about paying the dues, you're out of here. Right?
Oh, yeah, there's no farm system or going from here, you earn that, you get rewarded, then you go to the next. And that's how that was the way you did this,
right.
And you got $2 an hour for doing that, and then got a reward of an advancement, meaning promotion and respect, and all right, now we're going to slip you into this role, and and then you brass ring type thing, but not now.
And so you think about that sort of iterative learning, which we mentioned earlier too, and that's how competence was created. I think the competencies that young people need today are very, very different.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about understanding the rules and following the masters.
Right.
No pun intended, right. Jim Masters. It's more about rapid learning.
Back.
Yeah. It's about rapid learning. It's about contextual learning. It's about, you say you wanted to be respected. Everybody does. How do you respect people you disagree with? You don't understand, because if you can demonstrate that, manage yourself, you will be slated as a leader, because people will learn to trust you. They know that you will respect them. That you will listen to them. That's what people are hungry for. It isn't about positional power anymore. It isn't about technical expertise, so that will never not be important. But it's more about how do you manage you to get people to trust you, to follow you, so that when you said, hey guys, we were going this way, hard right, that they'll go, okay, I guess.
That's amazing. You have this favorite thought experiment. What if there was no one to blame? Tell us about that.
What if there was no one to blame? What if it wasn't your parents? What if it wasn't government? What if it wasn't pandemic? What if it wasn't the economy? What if whatever you're struggling with has zero source for you to blame? Think about where the energy goes instead. I got to figure out how I'm here. It doesn't even matter really how I got here. Where am I? And where do I need to go next? Driving through Death Valley, right? How am I going to do that? That takes a whole different mindset than that SOB or that witch with a B or this or this. That consumes all my energy. I got no energy left to problem solve or to move differently. So what if there's nobody to blame? I don't know who I am. Good, let's start there. Wow.
So is it like wiping a slate clean of all this stuff that you have built up and the baggage and it's this because of this and I wasn't loved enough and this and that respected and all of that. Nobody cares about me. They don't even know I'm existing. All those things. All that stuff that people...
It doesn't go away. I'm still mad. I'm still hurt. I still don't know how to be loved. I'm still confused. But I take all of the energy I was expending on trying to get rid of my anger and instead focusing on how do I really manage this to get past it.
Right.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, you think about it, it's like, wow,
yeah.
What if there was no one to blame?
Yeah.
Big.
Tell us about your background and your role as a leadership advisor.
I, again, grew up being an observer of people, pragmatic in the sense that we can think all we want, we can, ascribe motivation to other people, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And so let's look at what you're doing, how you're doing it, who's responding, and in what way does it work. And that's a different orientation a lot of times. All coaching is designed to get people to take responsibility.
Yeah.
Some people are very resistant to taking responsibility. Okay, I can't change you. I can't insist that you do things because you're not going to care. What I can do is reflect back. This is what I saw. Is that what you wanted? Changes the dynamic. And so I've had to learn. I like to lead. I like to get people, kind of engaged. But when it's not my responsibility, I have to leave it alone and simply help people understand their responsibility.
So you've had this extraordinary background in your own corporate career. Tell us about some of that and some of these opportunities you've had along the way that's just enhanced your ability to relate to people now, today.
Yeah, it's stumble forward, right? The answer to how is yes. Grew up a marketer, led a turnaround in the mid-90s, mid to late 90s, and was fascinated by that. Left thinking, I got this, I can do it on my own. Of course, tough to do. Took another job with an international HR company. Met more PhDs per capita than I had ever known existed. Learned a ton, didn't last long there, went back on my own, and then got connected with a professor out of the University of Michigan, Noel Tishy, who has written 16, 17 books on leadership. He was tough. Scared the out of me for many years. But traveled and helped establish the New York City Leadership Academy when Bloomberg took over the school system. Worked with boys and girls clubs. The most exotic experience was traveling to Brunei, little Muslim country surrounded by Malaysia, where we worked with the Minister of Education and his kind of staff to help their school teachers and principals be transformational leaders. Context, I began watching. This is a very compliant culture. Transformational leadership didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But I learned all kinds of things about a different culture, about different foods. The coffee they made was really bad. We had to teach them how to make American coffee. And one of the guys that I worked with, Jim, all he wanted to tell me about were his orchids. He grew these beautiful orchids. He didn't care about leadership. He cared about orchids.
About the orchids. Yeah.
And so it helped me understand that even though people are in a particular role, they may be acting because they've been hired to do or told to do, which is good. I mean, if they can get better and do it well, that's great. But there's more to people than that.
See, that's the thing that people sometimes don't realize, right? That there is more. That there are those people that like the orchids and others that have other interests. And that's where I think you being the observer of people, observer of life is essential. It's something you've been doing since you were a kid.
Yeah, and never, when you're a kid, you do stuff, you never think of it. And I can't say that it was an intentional leveraging of that. It certainly played out that way. And again, what a tremendous privilege to work with people.
Take us through a scenario maybe of a success story, maybe something, I don't have to mention names, but where this was the scenario that they were dealing with, whether it's a team, group, company, individual, and through your expertise in coming in, you've been able to create strategies and formats for them to follow in their own existence that have enhanced their lives in a beautiful way.
Vice president of a very large company and an engineer by training and an engineer in his thinking. Struggled to lead a team. I think they were beginning a new project, if I remember the context correctly. Had a couple of new young engineers right out of school. Frustrated that they didn't know what they didn't know. Assumed because they'd been hired at this company, they knew more than they did. The kids were terrified of him. He was Attila the Hun, and proud of it.
Some are, yeah.
And when I first began working with him, he couldn't understand why this girl, right, was brought in to help him do anything better than what he did. So to your point earlier, it was absolutely a contest of wills and power. And I simply relinquished control of that and began observing. And he was working on a PowerPoint presentation once, and he was showing me slides, and he'd have a slide, and then he'd build, and then he'd build, and then he'd build. And the last slide he showed was just a mess. And I thought, you know what, this is really representative of this guy's thinking. And so, humor, sometimes I can't help it. I just looked at it and I'm like, you know what? That's your brain on drugs. I thought it was hilarious. He was absolutely...
He wasn't...
No, how dare I disrespect him that way? But we worked it through. He actually not only got that team rolling on this project that they were supposed to do, but he had 3 or 4 others brought to him because he began to realize that the more he told people what to do, the less he got of their skill and their ability to think. So he learned a ton. It wasn't pretty. It was very, very messy. But we actually became friends through the process because we learned to trust each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. Trust is paramount with all this, right?
Yeah.
Trust is an essential part of the work that you do because when that trust is created and it's become a foundation, they're going to be more emotive with you and share more with you, right?
No doubt.
Which is incredible. Incredible corporate career prior to doing the work you're doing now. What are some of the significant lessons that you learned yourself as a woman in business?
It's not about you. It's not about your gender. There is no glass ceiling. People say, what are you even kidding me?
So much,
Again,
yeah.
it's what if there was no one to blame?
Right.
That makes people really uncomfortable. There's no glass ceiling. What do you mean? I've been trying to be promoted for blah, blah, blah. Maybe you try less hard. There's still, and probably perpetually will be, this argument about who deserves what pay and who's not being treated fairly and who's being passed over and all those kinds of things. I think it's endemic to the human character. But not to disrespect genders or lack thereof, right?
Right.
However you identify. And again, I don't want to get into that conversation. I want to talk about what you're trying to get done.
Right.
Where are you? What is the environment? What do you aspire to? Or what have you been assigned to? Let's focus on that.
How does emotional intelligence play into all of this as well in the work that you do, Susan?
It is a foundational piece. Many people don't understand it. And when at first, I think Goldman was the first to begin writing about it.
Right.
People thought, oh, it's the latest gimmick. Here we go. It's another fad. It's another thing. The fact that people are so unself-aware makes some people quite dangerous because they don't realize what they're doing and they don't realize the impact they're having. And unless they have someone who's brave enough to hold up the mirror and say, this is what's happening, you know, that kind of trammels down the track unguided. So emotional intelligence is huge. It's hard. I don't necessarily want to look at who I am and how I am. I just want to get stuff done.
Exactly right. You know, and I love reading books on emotional intelligence. I think it's something that I've been in tune with since I was a kid.
Yeah.
But now there's definitions for it, emotional intelligence, and I think it's just, you know, having an understanding of the plight of others and being empathetic towards an understanding of others.
Yeah.
It also allows you to then maybe when you see that with others, you understand yourself a little bit more too. So as you're helping others, you're helping yourself. It's meant to be
Absolutely.
a full circle.
Yeah.
You know, the world is round and it spins. It's supposed to be that way. Your book, What is of Beauty and Substance, a Backbone Guide for Women. Let's touch upon that one. What inspired you to write that one?
Well, it was How to Grow a Backbone was the foundation.
Yeah.
And then, because if you're going to monetize this thing, right, we're going to do books for young professionals, geeks, nonprofit leaders, parents, educators, and women. So there's this whole series, right? It's kind of like such and such for dummies. It was going to be Backbone Guide for And I started working on the geeks one first because I was really fascinated. It's like, how do we help geeks, right? have a backbone and be more productive? Well, I talked with probably 35 PhDs, researchers, scientists, technologists, docs. They didn't, so the title was Leveraging Your Genius, a Backbone Guide for Geeks. Oh, ever so, right, wonderful. They didn't want to leverage their genius in terms of sharing. Knowledge is power. And so I spent probably 6 months researching that, and I went, well, chuck that one. That's not going to work. And I thought, well, you know what, I'll write the Backbone Guide for Women. And Of Beauty and Substance was the title because we are taught to be beautiful in terms of our packaging, right? Don't age, don't do this, don't do that.
Exactly, yeah.
And so life moves on, and we age, and we wrinkle, and we get all these things, and then the insecurities kick in, and we say, oh my God, my time has passed, I've got nothing to contribute. No. While you are wrinkling, you are deepening in terms of knowledge and wisdom, self-awareness, that kind of thing. So the encouragement in that book is to, you know what, step away from the mirror and step out into the world. Think about what you bring.
Yeah.
Think about what you can help someone else do. Now, admittedly, I'm a helper. This is what I do. There's a lot of people who couldn't care less about that. Okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
Do what you do. But it's been interesting. And when did that one come out? 2014, I believe. So that's what, 8 years? What beauty and substance mean in terms of female behavior has changed dramatically. And we are in a time socially where we can't define what a woman is. And I don't understand that, but I don't have to, and I don't have to have an opinion about it. Again, I go back to who are you as an individual? Where are you in the context of your life, your work, your play, whatever that is? What do you want to do next? Mm-hmm. How can I help you get there? And if I can't, I hope you find somebody who can.
Right.
It's all about growth and learning and forward progress. And this particular, the pandemic, again, really changed everything. But I feel like we're spinning our wheels and trying to blame things and people. And so we are wasting so much energy
time,
when there's so much to be done. That's
Right.
good. That's happy. That's fun.
And that leads me to what you're saying as far as wasting energy and time. Life be in it. Tell us about that. What does that signify, that book?
That book is a compilation of 20 plus years of writing, pieces for the West Bend Daily News when I was many, many moons younger. I wrote for Wisconsin Woman magazine for years. I wrote for the Biz Times Milwaukee. And they were all, they're not advice, but they're perspective and reflection and noticing things. And some of it humorous, some of it just, the subtitle of that book is Words of Wit, Humor, and Encouragement. I'm an encourager. And the title came from, I was a kid growing up in West Bend, Wisconsin, and we had, Regner Park was a place where everybody went in the summertime, man-made lagoon and beach and, music the whole summer. Over the bathhouse, life, period, be in it, period. And I walked toward that as a kid, and I stopped and I looked at it and I thought, well, isn't that a cool thing? Life, be in it. It's painted over my kitchen sink now at my house. It is a reminder that life is messy and be in it. You're here.
Get in the game.
Do it. Yeah. One of my brothers, grab your mitt and get in the game. Same idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a compilation of many, many writings. And it was designed, it came out right after 2 years, I think, after How to Grow Backbone was published. Actually, maybe 10 years if I think about it. And it was designed to get me back into the market as an author. I can't say it accomplished that, but it's a cool book.
Like I said, those books, the first three we talked about, these books are very threaded. Then you have Mom's Gone Missing, When a Parent's Changing Life Upends Yours. And a lot of people are going through that right now and experiencing that within their families, dealing with Alzheimer's, dementia. I think I know even we have an aunt that's dealing with that now too.
Yeah.
What inspired you to want to, a little bit of a departure from these other more business-focused books, what really spoke to you to want to share and write this one?
The experience of helping first Dad and then Mom leave the planet. That's maybe overstating it a bit, but Dad had a 10 or 12-year journey with Alzheimer's. We didn't understand it. And of course, denial is the first thing. Oh, he's just getting older. He's just getting older. He's just getting older. Yeah. And he got worse and worse. And watching Mom struggle to deal with it, take him to adult daycare first, and then finally put him full-time into a facility, and how it devastated her was part of it, but her memory fell off a cliff. And after Dad passed, she was by herself in Arizona. As I mentioned, I was in Wisconsin. The brother who called me, actually how the book starts is real. It's a real story. I got the phone call from my brother at 7:30 on a Monday morning. Mom's gone missing. Find her. Mm-hmm. He called from Colorado. I answered in Wisconsin. Mom's in Arizona. What? Are you kidding me? So I had basically 2 years of figuring out, how do you do this? How do you talk with medical people? How do you deal with 5 siblings who have different stories, different perspectives, different ideas about what's going on? How do you relocate someone after a lifetime, right? And put this parent, who I didn't like as a kid, into a memory care facility and have responsibility? I knew nothing about any of that, Jim. And I spent that entire time feeling inadequate.
And you could have walked from it because of the earlier relationship. You could have said, hey, look, you're calling me in Colorado, you're closer, you're halfway there. Why don't you?
You handle it.
Right.
What? And I'm an independent. I don't have a spouse. I don't have a job. I don't have a vacation time. All of that aside, what if there's no one to blame? But I felt so horribly inadequate and so uncertain about every decision I made. I thought, you know what? We're not trained to do this, but if my experience can help someone else, again, the helping aspect, here are some things to ask a doctor. Here's how to deal with an attorney who doesn't trust children because they're trying to get at whatever they can get, right? Set aside your resentment about that. How can you help people? And that was the process for me. So you go back to competence, confidence, and risk-taking. I had no competence in any of this, but I knew those 3 elements. Mm-hmm. And so I would journal a lot, and I'd say, what did I learn today? How did that help me ask the next question? How did that help me make a decision that I am ill-equipped to make? And so, ironically, all of that business training served me at probably the most personally challenging chapter of my life and helped parents depart the planet. It truly upended my life. Mm. And I think a lot of people experience that, if not as holistically as I did, certainly emotionally, certainly intellectually. And it's been so extraordinarily well received.
What did you learn from it yourself?
Yeah, and it's raw.
Yeah, it is, right.
Yeah.
What are some things that you're left with from the experience and then writing the book, which sort of enhances that experience?
How fragile life is, even if it goes on for a very long period of time. Mm-hmm. How hungry most of us are to be understood, not necessarily accepted, and there's a distinction there, but simply to be allowed to be who we are. And then the trajectory that I saw in my parents' lives. They met when they were in high school. They married. They had a wonderful time building family, building careers, right? They had this period of enjoying life, gradually began to relinquish things, and then were gone.
Yeah.
And so why do we struggle with things here when we're just not here very long?
Right.
It's part of the human experience, part of growing and all
I say it all the time, too. All the nonsense, the bickering, the yelling, the road rage, the fighting, the pushing and shoving, just all the stuff. If you thought about the fact that you could go right now, standing in a supermarket line, you can just drop. Anything can happen. I mean, if we operated with the thought that, time is precious and it's important and it's valuable and we all bring something to the table, I think we would react to things and want to connect more deeply. But not everybody, although it seems like that, a lot of people are just me, and it's mine, and I don't care, I don't have time for that. And
but think about...
Not exactly the world I like.
No.
It's not my world.
No, but if I'm one of these go, do, I don't care, and I began to realize that my life is very short,
and empty.
Would that make me more compassionate, or would it cause me to drive harder? The irony is that 12 days after my mother passed, my brother-in-law literally dropped dead at work, 61 years old. stunning, absolutely stunning to me. It broke my heart for my sister, who's a key character in the book. But what you learn, if you're willing to learn, and so writing
That's
the
a key
book
part,
really
is the
helped me process things,
Right.
write things that I went back and went, yeah, no. I joke oftentimes, book version 2 of Mom's Gone Missing is going to be the Jerry Springer version. That's the one I'm going to make a lot of money and be really famous
That's the
for.
one that goes viral, and people want to know behind the scenes.
Tell me about
and
your
This one
siblings.
bickered with that one, and I couldn't stand her, and how did I get lumped with this? And
Yeah, not going there. But there was that. I mean, you tell from your perspective, and I say in the introduction, the foreword of the book, this is my story.
right.
My 5 siblings probably have very different stories. I don't know theirs, so I can only write mine, and it caused some discomfort. But the parts that I knew would be inflammatory, I just kind of left out.
Yeah, that's it.
No point.
It'll be in the movie. There's also compassion chats,
Yeah.
which I know are kind of like what we're having here, which are very important to the work that you do. Tell us about these.
Yeah, we started these a year ago, March 2021. We're in 2022, right? And the idea that hand in hand with I didn't know what to do, even if I knew an agency to call, what would I say? Who would I ask to talk to? What? So I thought, you know what, maybe we can bring in providers, Alzheimer's Association, Aging and Disability Resource, daily money managers, real estate agents, people who stage homes, help people move. We're expanding them this year to include mental health professionals, because that's such a huge piece of this. And researchers out of the Wisconsin Wisconsin Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. We have this month, actually next week, we'll have one of the researchers on, a physician, talking about what do we know about Alzheimer's and the changes in the brain and the lifestyle activities that help. So the idea there was not only to help people understand that there are resources, but to bring the humans behind the agencies, thinking if we can connect people, a caregiver may be more inclined to pick up a phone and call Tim at the Alzheimer's Association, rather than call the agency and not know who you're talking to. They've been very, very well received, and I'm hoping, frankly, that we can grow those beyond our little homely audience that we have now.
How much of this particular work and this focus and this topic with Alzheimer's and dementia, how much of this has now been part of what you do now?
More so than I maybe would have expected, because the pandemic shut everything down. But as I think about the work, Jim, moving forward, they're not disconnected. Competence, confidence, risk-taking, right? Leadership in a world where people are losing their ability to understand becomes extraordinarily important. What does that look like? And it feels like that may be the next iteration of my work. We'll see. I'll lean into it, kind of, and work with it and see where, we never know where life's going to take us.
No, right, exactly.
So we'll see.
What do you see for the future of this work that you do? Obviously, the work that you're doing is impactful and life-changing on many different levels, and very important and crucial. And I know it brings you great blessing and joy as well. What do you see as the future of some of the things you want to do going forward?
I would like to have it more organized and obviously marketed. I think the compassion chats is an idea that we can all use, right? Not only in caregiver roles, but basically through life. But sticking with Alzheimer's and dementia, we're all dealing with it. And that population is going to do nothing but grow. I expect I will be one of them, right, at some point. So to help people understand, it's kind of like we talked before we started to shoot. Alzheimer's and dementia is like the C word when we were growing up. Nobody talked about cancer. The more fearful we are of this disease, the less we'll learn about it. Marty Schreiber, who wrote My Two Elaines, he and his wife Elaine were Alzheimer's advocates for years and years and years. She just passed several weeks, maybe a month ago by now, but he absolutely champions. And Marty always says, the disease is terrible. What's even more terrible is not knowing about it, not being ignorant about it. Learn, learn, learn. So if I can help that effort, perhaps in a different way, and bring people together. You and I do this. It's how do we knit people back together?
Right.
after 2+ years of being so isolated and separated and scared.
Mm-hmm. Why do you love this work so much? What does it bring you, that blessing and joy in your life?
I think perhaps because I had a grandmother who listened to me when I was a dumb teenager who knew nothing, and how it impacted me in terms of teaching me to listen rather than demand answers, in terms of thinking about what's possible and making a choice rather than being steered by, right, the winds of time or whatever it is. That stayed with me my entire life. If I can be grandma in that regard to somebody else, well, what's better?
I'm sure you've absorbed elements of her
Yeah.
in watching as the observer, the keen observer at that age, that you express now in your work and in your life with others.
And I want people to have fun.
That's
Life
yes,
is fun.
you
It's
gotta-
funny. We're all
Levity is
nuts.
important, right?
We are all nuts.
Yeah.
To the
Irma
extent we
Bombeck
can-
used to bring that out a lot.
Yeah, she was wonderful. I read her work too. To the extent that we can get okay with the fact that you're nuts, Jim, and I'm nuts, Susan, and everybody around us is nuts. Our nuttiness is just different flavors. It doesn't need to be fixed. It doesn't need to be changed. I don't need people to think like I do. And if they feel like they need me to think like they do, then we're probably not going to have much of a relationship. That's okay.
The only thing I think I do different is I describe my nuts as creative.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, versus manic. Yeah, okay.
Words are everything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This was really fantastic. Anything that you'd like to share before we wrap this brilliant conversation? If there's somebody that is watching right now and they're enjoying what we're talking about and they're sort of plugging into it,
Yeah.
they're just not sure what steps to take next. I always say that one of the greatest investments you can make in life is in yourself. And obviously working with somebody like you, of not only your expertise level and training and skill set, but your compassion and your understanding of the human condition can only be a positive thing for somebody. What would you say to somebody watching right now who is sort of teetering on the fence? Should I do this? Should I not? I can get through it on my own. What do I do next
Yeah.
to welcome them?
Take the step. Make the phone call, send the email, reach out. It's the scariest thing to do. And most people will stay okay enough to really never do the work.
Right.
And I think one of the greatest sadnesses for many people at the end of life is to say, why didn't I?
To look back, yeah.
What could I have done? What could I have been? Why wait? Right?
Right.
Try for it now. If it doesn't work, okay, but you got a story to tell.
Part of it's risk-taking.
Absolutely.
But in this case, it's investment.
Yeah.
You're making, if they pick up the phone and they connect with you, or send an email and they connect with you, or go to the website and connect with you, they're investing in themselves.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I think is key and important to all of this is your ability to be, which again is you just expressing you're not judgmental. You don't have things already set up in your mind about that person. You let that person be them. And by not, sometimes people come in and they already size it up. All right, you fit in that box and you fit in that and sit up straight and do that. And that turns people off. That's not what they want to hear.
Yeah.
They want them to be able to be heard and express what they want to express. And you will give people that space. From top CEOs who are doing extremely well in life to anybody that's just struggling with things in life, right? You work with them all.
Absolutely, and recognizing that as inadequate as you may feel right now, you have characteristics, you have skills, you have abilities.
Right.
You know what they are.
Right.
You're just not comfortable yet
To
taking
share
that
them.
step. Yeah. The other thing I really like to say, Jim, and I think we closed our radio interview, 2 words: be kind. Be kind to yourself first. Because when you can get the sense of what that feels like, you can begin sharing that with other people. I know that sounds very Pollyanna, put on your rose-colored glasses. It's hard to be kind. But once you figure it out, it gives you tremendous strength. And again, the confidence to go anywhere, to talk to anyone, to do anything you want.
Sometimes rose-colored glasses are better than glasses with no lenses.
Like Mr. Magoo?
I was going to say, right. See what happened?
Yeah.
This was really a pleasure. This was a fascinating conversation. I love the fact we got a chance to dig a little deeper, learn more about you and why you enjoy what you do so much and the impact that you make and the work that you express to your clients, I think is extraordinary. And you know, you talk about some of these works that have been written 22 years ago. I think you were ahead of the game. I think you're already ahead of the curve on many different things, and I think that's important, and we encourage folks to make contact with you.
Appreciate that.
Because I think they're really going to get something. I know when we had that radio conversation, there were just elements that I saw already that I said, people need to hear this more. They need to feel this, that there is somewhere that they can go to.
Yeah.
There's a place where you can go where if you are that top CEO and you're doubting yourself, or you're just somebody who's an entrepreneur, maybe just want to create something and you're holding yourself back because you're afraid people aren't going to respond to it. They're not going to like what your thought is or your creation is. You can help them because you've lived it yourself. Walk the walk, talk the talk. There's nothing better.
Absolutely true. Thank you. I appreciate that.
This was fantastic. Thanks for coming to the television studio at Close Up and spending time with us. And I wish you nothing but continued blessings and joy and success, and looking forward to catching up more with you.
I'll be back.
In the words of Schwarzenegger,
There you
she'll
go.
be back.
Get my shades. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Susan.
Appreciate
a real
it,
pleasure
Jim.
and an honor.
Likewise.
If you'd like to learn more, visit SusanAMarshall.com. Close Up Television and Radio, I'm Jim Masters. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time.